saber lo que es real y lo que no. Qué es luz y qué es oscuridad. Ahora, olvídalo todo y ven conmigo. Willow.
Hi, John. This is Pedro from Cartelera, Spain. How are you?
I'm good, but if I don't ask you what that figure is behind you, I'll regret it for the rest of my life.
That is Night Monkey from Spider-Man: Far From Home, and there you have Peter Parker as well.
Oh, amazing!
That's a Hot Toys. Yeah,
amazing.
That's my personal collection.
All right.
Yeah,
I would play with those if I were there with you.
Yeah, I do that every day. Okay, let's talk about Willow. This show is a dream come true for fans of fantasy movies of the 80s, and I grew up watching Willow, and that film means so much for people of my generation and your generation. I think we're both kids of the 80s. And that was a very fertile decade for these kind of stories. So I want to know, why did it take so long to make a sequel, and why now is the best time to
well,
bring
I'll tell you, Pedro, the funny thing is that it was such a great moment for these kinds of stories, you know, sort of between 1981 and 1989, but they all struggled to break through at the box office the way other movies of that era really were. Right. And so many of the greats, movies like Lady Hawk and movies like Labyrinth, they didn't find the audience theatrically that the studios that made them hoped they would. So they have a funny historical thing where they all they're rich in memory for a lot of us kids, but they're untouched. And this moment feels like the one where we're going to come back and revisit them and get to see those stories continue to be told, because there is such love and warmth for them. And the kids making movies now are the kids who grew up on those stories, you know?
That's right. Well, this is a new generation. This is a mixture of the old and the new. Yeah. Watching the show, I felt like the teenage characters had a modernity to them in terms of how they speak and how they behave. So, and then I joined the dots, and I saw that you started writing on TV for teen shows like Dawson's Creek and Freaks and Geeks.
Yes.
So did you use that experience to write the younger characters in Willow?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that so struck me about Willow when I saw it in 1988 and sort of set it apart from a lot of the other fantasy movies, even of that time, was that Val Kilmer brought to it such an original sound and rhythm. It could only have existed in the late 80s. His hair, his voice, his comedic instincts were so specific to that moment. And I thought that if we were going to continue this story, we needed to balance the timelessness of Warwick with that same kind of contemporary edge. And so I sort of went about assembling these characters who would each bring some element of that was unique and their own a little bit. And certainly my experience writing young characters was something I fell back on, but only because I still feel like a teenager myself and have never really grown up. So it's natural to me to write these sort of seeking young protagonists and heroines who are casting about for the answers to their lives, because I relate to them.
About the visual aspect of the show, even though the original film had some groundbreaking visual effects in the 80s, almost everything was practical back then. So I know there are a lot of practical effects in this show, but how did the new technologies help recreate and expand the world of Willow?
Well, one thing about the movie that was so powerful to me was the sense of scale and of danger and of tactile reality that it had. You know, you were with Warwick on those muddy roads in the rain. You were sort of out there in these vast landscapes, and we thought we could build that out in a way that wasn't possible in 1988. We could create whole new worlds and new vistas that had that same level of reality. So the hope is that when you watch the show, you're asking yourself, is that a real place or is that an imaginary place? And it's less easy to make the distinction than I think it is in much of blockbuster filmmaking nowadays, you know?
Yeah, well, to wrap it up real quickly, I have to ask, do you think there could be a way to bring back Ewoks to Star Wars? You know, thinking of
I'm certain
Lucasfilm.
there's a way to bring back Ewoks. In fact, I'm certain someone somewhere is working on that right now. No, what's been amazing about this period in Star Wars is that the appetite is there and the energy to tell all kinds of stories is there too. So, you know, for every kind of Star Wars fan, there's someone trying to bring it to life. And I think Ewoks are inevitable, and hopefully Warwick comes back and reprises his other most famous role.
That would be amazing.
No lo soporto.
El tiempo apremia.
¿Cómo vas a vencerlos? Como la última vez. Con mis amigos.